No.
Hi. Since the last video of me speaking with you, a lot has transpired in our maybe Call of Cthulhu campaign. It certainly has started to look more and more like it's developing into a campaign, but it's definitely arrived at a pretty satisfying exploration of an initial mystery, an initial investigation. We have grown from one investigator to two investigators to three investigators working together to four investigators, one working on their own, and are about to embark on the fifth investigator, also an individual, an independent investigation, starting up tomorrow. It's pretty exciting. All set in the same place, all set roughly at the same time, but from different perspectives and investigating different or possibly not so different things. That's pretty cool. This video is not a recap. This video is not about that stuff. There'll be another video for that. Instead, this video is going to look at three things: solo investigations, skills, and sanity. So let's deal with the solo investigations first. As you may recall, the very first actual play video in this series began with a single investigator, Terrence McSweeney, played by Ivan of the Ivan Mike 1968 YouTube channel. And this was a day like any other for him. And as you'll know if you've watched that video, it was an investigation. It was a character going about their daily life and getting entangled in mysterious circumstances. And one of the conceits of this campaign is the desire or the ability to recruit new players to join it, as it becomes evident to the people currently playing that it would be awesome if we could have this person that we know join in the guise of this particular investigator that would otherwise be an NPC. Right. So through the course of events, through the mystery that was revealed in the first session, Terrence McSweeney, a newspaper reporter for the Boston Post, recognizes that no one will ever believe this story without photographic proof. And so he calls contact photographer, a true crime photographer who specializes in the sort of horrific details that Terrence had uncovered. Now, other aspects of this mystery were connected to valuable stolen artifacts that date back in history. And so, another gentleman of their acquaintance, an antiquarian and antique dealer, was also brought in as a result of things that happened in the first and second sessions, bringing the total number of investigators to three, each one with a different area of expertise. And so we have Terrence McSweeney, we have Callum McInnes, and we have Alfred Smalls, all working together and all being slowly and inexorably drawn into these investigations. So it began as a solo investigation broadened out into a more, let's say, traditional play structure of multiple players and one keeper of arcane lore. However, the reason for the conceit of having people being able to be drawn in to the campaign is so that any information about what the characters know, what the characters have experienced, and that sort of thing, can be transmitted in character, as character, between characters. So what Terrence McSweeney has discovered, he can show or tell Callum McInnes. they can then show or tell Alfred Smalls. There are other characters also involved in this setting. We'll talk about them in detail in other videos once their actual plays have been released. But there, the conceit is the same. We will, through their eyes, experience how they get involved in this cosmically horrible investigation, whichever thread of investigation that they get involved with. And it may or may not be possible for these solo investigations to join in with our trio of investigators, Terrence, Callum, and Alfred Smalls. But it will allow us to look at Boston in a different way, and will open up opportunities for even more players to be drawn in, maybe to work with one or more of the other solo characters. So since the campaign, at least the adventure, has started, or the investigation has started, the trio of Terrence, Callum, and Alfred have also separated, and they've separated to do research, and this has opened up the opportunity for more solo play so that they can go off, they can focus on their research, they can do the things that their characters are really good at doing, but in isolation, things that take a lot of time, things that may or may not need roles or resources or traveling to different places to talk to different experts. And then they'll be able to come back and share this information in character, as character, with their fellow players. So that's the idea behind the solo play. So we'll be going with single players, we'll be going with pairs of players and trios of players and maybe more, and back again to solo play and team play and pairs of players and totally different players operating near the same timeline but in the same setting, all to deeply explore the nature of mystery, the nature of investigation, secrets, and discovery, and this particular take on November 1931 in a Boston that never was and hopefully never could be. The second part of this video deals with skills. Now, if you've been watching, you're aware that from time to time a ship's horn will blow or a foghorn will blow, and there'll be a note on the screen that talks about maybe what a particular role was or what particular skill was used, rolled or unrolled. You'll see notations about why something was allowed through as an automatic success, or why in this particular case I asked for a roll. As we talked about in the very first video in the series, part of trying to be able to play smoothly and comfortably from an in-character as character standpoint, focusing only on the things that the character experiences, we would like to be able to minimize speaking about roles. We'd like to still use those skills as they are presented on the character sheets. We still want to bring the system into play. We just don't necessarily want to talk about it or have to stop one thing, roll dice, evaluate and discuss results, and then resume play in character as character. BRP is one of those systems that is ideally suited for assessing whether or not a situation is within the normal purview of a skill. And if it is, then we can assume success given the right resources and the right amount of time. So my process for assessing that is being exposed through these annotations that are put on the screen. And there'll be more specific videos like this that will talk about that process later on, using specific examples from the actual play series. But this is not that video. The final part of this video is about sanity. Now, sanity can be something of a touchy topic in role-playing circles these days. And I know there are many people out there who feel that that attitude is new. Like, oh, how could people in the 80s have, treated this topic so cavalierly? Well, having lived through the 80s, I can comfortably tell you that we didn't really treat it cavalierly even then. And one of the things that helped us, especially those of us with no personal experience of sanity or mental health as an aspect of our daily lives, was seeing it presented in game form. Now, even going back to the earliest editions of Call of Cthulhu, what is presented is that sanity is a game concept that is emulating something that is a core part of the protagonist's experience in the fiction of Lovecraft and the Lovecraft circle. It's not real sanity. It's maybe an unfortunate naming of a fictional effect that is part of this particular genre of fiction. Now, in game terms, we are going for an experience, the opportunity to put our attention inside the confines of the things that delineate the genre. Now, a lot of people feel that role-playing games are the opportunity to be inside a story, to be a protagonist inside a story, to be part of the fiction. They even talk about the things that we imagine as the fiction. But this play series is not about that at all. We are inhabiting, to the best of our ability, an understanding of a character inside a situation that would be real to them and is imagined for us. The shocks that the characters experience, the traumas, the physical, mental, magical, and experiential shocks that these characters experience are called in the game sanity. And they're not handled trivially like roll on this D100 table to determine what random insanity happens to your character. Now, in all the editions of Call of Cthulhu, prior to 7th, we can see random tables, and they're there for a purpose. We also see it as a list of ways to, in game terms, think about conditions that can arise from traumatic experiences. Ways that the character will be changed because of what they have experienced. Things that we have encountered in play in our imagined situation. What the game asks us to do is to, in communication with the player of the investigator, it asks us to consider what the result of this particular horrific experience might be upon the character. How will their outward behavior, how will their inner life be affected by this particular experience? This might be something that is temporary. This might be something that exists a little longer, an indefinite period of this condition playing a role in how that character is perceived and how that character perceives. At a certain point, the character will have suffered so much that they are removed from play. And I think this is commonly misunderstood out there among people who play the game casually or have never played it at all. It's at that point that what we might callously call insanity begins. Prior to that, the player is in control of their character. The player determines exactly what the character does. And the character is asked to role play the change in how their character began play through the things that are marking them, the things that are scarring them. Not for the purposes of entertainment of other people around the table, but for the purposes of your experience, your ability to look at the world through someone else's eyes, your ability to imagine life differently, placing yourself in someone else's shoes, to cease focusing on you and your identity and what you would do and that sort of stuff, and to embrace the notion of living life through someone else's perceptions or someone else's senses, someone else's background, to open yourself to a different experience, which is generally seen as a good thing. So in this campaign so far, the shocks that characters have experienced have been significant. Not to the point in game mechanical terms where a lot of characters are experiencing major shifts in their condition. Right? We have one character, Terrence McSweeney, who has suffered enough that he entered a period of what we call temporary, in game terms, temporary insanity. Now, how this has manifested in play was chosen by the player. And he and I were very much in sync with what the character was like prior to play, how the character has been manifesting in play, and what it seems absolutely logical and appropriate for the character to do as a result of their experiences. The character and the other characters around Terrence McSweeney have been representing a very strong theme of denial. This can't be true, this can't be happening, it shouldn't be real, these kinds of experiences. And so this desperate pushing away of what has been happening, the attempt to define it and redefine it as something other than it is a very persistent theme. And so that's exactly what happens to this character. They begin to use their strongest talent, their words. They're a reporter. They're a writer. They begin to try and explain it away. They speak almost without control, a torrent of explanation, a torrent of revision, of censoring certain parts of the topic so that it doesn't come up. And yet that deep desire to explore it and see it for what it really is, only to once again turn away from it. Pretty fascinating and interesting, and from a certain point of view, horrific. It's pretty easy to say at a certain point Call of Cthulhu became more sensitive about insanity, but that certain point is way earlier in its history than people might realize or be willing to accept. So, in terms of insanity as a loss of agency, you are advised early on. Take a look at the recent second edition reprints. You'll see it for yourself. For the Game Master to make decisions in conjunction with the player about what kind of condition or result these shocks will have. The choice is not advised to be random. The random table is there in case the game mechanical effects of these shocks can't be determined. Right? So choose something, make something up, or, as a last result, roll it on the table, and then, using that as inspiration, role play the character's shock. How have these experiences affected the character? It's now up to you as the player to show us that It's now up to you as the player to use your imagination to consider what that might be like, to see life as someone else might see it, to develop a little empathy. So while it is unfortunate that it is called Sanity, and we're talking about sanity points, and there's a clear and definite mechanism in play to bring this aspect of the original fiction into a manageable format, the effect of the experience when taken as an experience, I think, is a very inclusive one. And neither needs to dominate and restrict play in a, ha-ha, now you have this phobia, you must now begin to act like an idiot. That kind of falls into the same type of player mistake as the, I'm going to drive my car to the convenience store to buy some milk and eggs to feed the other investigators. I guess I have to roll my drive now, but I only have 25%, so I guess I'm going to crash and die. Representing sanity so cavalierly, so randomly, and so pointlessly isn't really what it's about. Anyway, until the next video, take care.